This video is made possible by Practical Defense Systems, the best online security training at the lowest prices. You can start your security career today online at pdsclasses.com. Check them out. Hi, I'm Joel Persinger. I'm the Gun Guy. Thank you very much for all of your support of GunGuyTV. I'm super grateful. And I want you to ask you, please don't stop. Keep supporting what I'm doing here because it's I think it's very important. I hope you do too. All right, I wanted to mention to you this is going to be a pretty tough video because we're going to talk about some things that happened in Afghanistan. We're going to talk about what's happening there, and Rick and I are going to talk plainly and in an uncensored sort of way about how we feel and about what's happened and where that leaves us as Americans. So if you decide to watch further than this, be aware of that. I also want to make clear something because I'm not a fan of straw man arguments. And the President of the United States, well, it's even hard to say, Bumbling Biden, has made repeatedly some straw man arguments with regard to Afghanistan. So I want to square away my view of those right now for you before I get started with the interview with Rick. I live in San Diego County, California. We're a military town. It's very difficult to go into any crowd and throw a paper airplane without having it hit an active duty military member or a former military or retired military person because we have them all over the place. In San Diego County, we love our Marines. We love our sailors. We're very grateful for them. We're a Marine Corps and sailor town. We're proud of that. And we don't mince words about it when people attack the Navy or the Marine Corps around here. So I wanted to make sure if you're a military member, you understand that what the president, again, it's even hard for me to say that, what Biden has put forth on a number of occasions, and somehow people are not angry at him or angry at the way he left Afghanistan, they're upset with the military, that couldn't be further from the truth. Everyone I talk to, and I talk to many people who agree with me politically and don't, as you might imagine. I'm approached by them in public quite often on both sides of that spectrum and all in between. And universally, they are grateful for our military members and the fine work that they do. The men and women of the United States military have done their job. They've done it excellently and honorably, and I'm grateful for them. The other thing I want to point out is that the president has posed a straw man on a number of occasions where he's indicated that people are upset that we left Afghanistan. No, that's not true. It's very hard to find anybody who doesn't believe that at some point we needed to be out of that war. We can't be in war in Afghanistan for the rest of time. The Afghan people have to be able to run their own country, if you want to call it a country. It really isn't a country. It's a collection of multiple tribes, but nevertheless, if they want to have a country, they have to be able to do that. However, when you leave, there's a way to do it, and there's a way not to do it. And if it was at all possible, I didn't believe it was possible, Joe Biden managed to do every single thing wrong. That has nothing to do with whether we left Afghanistan or not. It has nothing to do with the men and women, the fine men and women of the United States military, and the other military members from other countries who are allies who were there. It has everything to do with the blithering, idiotic buffoon who occupies the White House. And I wanted to make sure that was very, very clear before we go talk to Rick. All right. Like I said, I'm not holding back today. So if you don't want to hear it, now's the time to stop. If you want to hear it, let's go talk to Rick. Rick, thank you very much for joining me. It's kind of a solemn conversation, which is a bit of a drag, but we're going to have it anyway because you and I have talked about this. We're both of the opinion that Biden has lost all legitimacy in the gun debate, but I think he's lost all legitimacy altogether. There are a number of things I would show you before you go, so I'm going to show these to you real quick, and then I'm going to let you respond. Larry Keane from the National Shooting Sports Foundation recently published an article entitled "President Biden Surrendered U.S. Arms to Terrorists. He Wants to Take Yours." And that's sort of the theme of this. If you start looking at the incredible amount of armament that Biden left behind for the Taliban. It's amazing. Here's an article that appeared in World. How much military equipment was left in Afghanistan? The U.S. helicopters and arms now under Taliban control. And I made the graphic a little bigger for you, so if you're watching this, you can see that there are over 3,000 Humvees. Look at the number of helicopters. Believe it or not, 3 C-130 Hercules, light helicopters, Black Hawk helicopters, 33 of those, various different types of airplanes. Look at that, 7,035 M4s, 20,000 grenades. This is astounding what Biden left behind. And just to add some reality to it, here's some pictures I pulled off the web of the armament left to the Taliban. I mean, you can tell what they are, so I'm just going to show them to you real quick. Helicopters, fighter jets, ground vehicles like this up-armored Humvee. And of course, when you get this stuff free from the United States, you have to jump in there and have a selfie, don't you? I mean, if you don't do the selfie, it's just not the same. So there he is doing the selfie. Perhaps one of the most alarming things to me is this, and that is the biometric high-tech stuff we left behind, because this has in it a database. I mean, there's a database of people who helped the United States. The Taliban's using this to identify those people so that they can kill them. And let me tell you something, when the Taliban kills somebody, they're not nice about it. In addition to that, Rick, all the things and all the repercussions associated with that, you know that a lot of the high-tech things we left are going to end up in the hands of China to be reverse engineered by them and used against our own forces. What am I? I'm not a veteran. You are. What am I missing here? Am I missing anything in this?
Probably more gross details than you want to know. One of the things that is disturbing about this, and there's a plethora of them, is we have been told repeatedly by former Senator Biden, former Vice President Biden, and President Biden, a couple of things. One, you can trust me. Well, I'm just going to be blunt. Everyone, I want you to go look up the story. Back during the war, when he was Senator Biden, he wouldn't have been vice president had it not been for an Afghan interpreter. And when I say that, I'm not elevating somebody within, Afghanistan to make them this hero. It's on multiple news platforms across the political spectrum that this individual was the reason Senator Biden was alive to become Vice President Biden and now the president. And he is one of the people Biden has left behind enemy lines. He's a high-value target for the Taliban, ISIS, and all the other groups out there. And if the guy who saves your life can't trust you, how can any of us, the American people, that have no personal relationship? Because nothing's more personal than the person that's saving your life. And he did, and he's totally being denied anything. So I think everybody needs to let that sink in. The sheer numbers you showed of, the number of M4s and like firearms that were sent, I need people to really, each of you has to think about this for a moment. According to the White House, we had 2,500 assortment of military personnel from the Marine Corps, the Air Force, the Navy, and the Army inside Afghanistan when their decisions in July were, we're rolling forward, we're moving out. Okay, 2,500 people don't need 20,000 grenades. They don't need 3 rifles apiece. I'm not saying they only need exactly 2,500 of everything. That's erroneous as well. But my point was they knew they were winding down. They had time to move that aircraft. Hell, before they got rid of Bagram Air Force Base in the middle of the night, they could have taken those last 3 C-130s as an example and flown them anywhere. They could have used those from the airport to evacuate people. I mean, I think all of us have to start really looking at this and saying, what the heck is going on? Because when you look at it, clearly there were munitions to help defend the base there at Karzai Airport. There were abilities for the people to have more enough munitions to help reinforce Afghan soldiers. But even this morning, before we got on, I was listening. There's a well-known phone call that the president of the United States has a couple of months prior saying, hey, how do you want to do this? Like he was involved. He knew exactly what he was doing. There is crystal clear evidence. And, a former president had a phone call that I don't want anyone to ever forget. And the entire Congress on the Democratic side went off and said, let's impeach him. Well, this phone call actually shows that he put America, her allies, and the people who put their lives on the line. And when the Taliban goes through, like any other fundamentalist Islamic group, they don't just take out the person that was the interpreter. They take out the interpreter, their spouse, their kids, their parents, anything that they owned, it all gets wiped out. And somehow we're getting labeled as the bad guy, and how we get a president to declare surrender. And when you give away all of that and you act the way he has, it's been completely disgraceful. It's a complete surrender. And how this ties to our Second Amendment is, I want everyone to realize, as a senator, as a vice president, as a president, he has said you don't need to have your AR-15s or your M4s or any other military type equipment because there's no military type threat. Wait, you just armed our most brutal enemy, arguably in the world, gave them the ability to come in with 7,000 firearms, tens of thousands of grenades, grenade launchers, everything, and wreak havoc in our country and in territories and embassies across the world with our own weapons against us. And this is why we deserve to be able to purchase, own, and operate those weapons in the defense, because I don't buy the president is going to be there to defend me when he won't defend the man who saved his life.
Well, the truth is his default position is to lie. When he talked to the president of Afghanistan, he talked about that phone call, he urged him to present publicly as if things were better than they really were. Well, it's got to look better than that. And so what did he do? He came out and lied to the American people. So Biden's default position is to lie. I am so tired of people saying, well, yeah, but he's such a nice guy. No, he's not. Biden has never been a nice guy. He's a serial liar. He's a career criminal. He's spent his entire public life making money by selling his office. And he's no different today, other than the fact I think he's got the beginnings of dementia, but he's no different today character-wise than he ever was before. His son is nothing more than a more obvious version of him, which is why he's a criminal. So what we have in the White House is a guy that does not care about this country, does not care about its people. You mentioned the interpreters. I'm just going to mention the United States citizens who are still left behind. And,
Right.
you know, people can say they left them as stranded, the citizens are stranded. No, he left hostages. That's what he left. He didn't leave Americans stranded. He left them there to be hostages, to be brutally treated, murdered in some cases, and used as hostages against us. You know, you can say, and I know I'm talking more than I normally do when I do these interviews, but the truth is, this is really irritating to me beyond repair. We've just armed these people, and you can say, yeah, but that's in Afghanistan. Okay, how difficult is it for them to get to South America and come north, particularly when we have a southern border that isn't a border anymore because they're just letting people waltz on through unchecked? Yes, the Border Patrol does stop a certain number of them, but for every one they stop, there's a great number they don't, that they miss. How hard is it to walk across the border with a grenade? How hard is it to walk across the border with with an M4?
Well, you don't even have to talk about walking across the border. I think it's much easier. And, you know, nobody wants to talk about this, but Joel, you and I live near two of the biggest port cities, not just here in the United States, but in the world. You're down near San Diego, which, if I remember correctly, from when I used to live down there, it's like the 6th largest port city. I live right next to San Pedro, Long Beach, LA Harbor, depending on who you're talking to about it, what they want to name it. But both of those are huge. We have container ships all the time off of our coast. They do not scan down for every possible thing in every box that gets through, because we all know from law enforcement agencies how much stuff goes through. That is a leaky, porous sieve. And to put in a container that's a 10 by 20 or a 10 by 30, 40 rifles and a couple hundred grenades and some C4 and some biometric devices, that's not a hard thing to sneak into this country, especially when you realize how much, the people are moving around, obviously influenced by countries like Iran and others. They can move that so that container gets loaded up in a country that's not on the watch list. And so that container comes in, and then people are already here, pick it up, and then whatever happens, happens. And my point is, if any president should have been more leery of this, it should have been Biden, because Biden was there when we had the whole Fast and Furious thing with Obama and seeing how that went. But at least to Obama's credit, and I'm trying to be a little funny, but think about it. He at least got money from the cartels for the firearms. Biden just gave them away.
80 some odd billion dollars worth.
Right.
I mean, think about that. I was reading yesterday that the Social Security and Medicare system is almost bankrupt and will be bankrupt soon, but yet we can spend $8 trillion in Afghanistan and we can leave 80 some odd billion dollars of our equipment behind. No big deal. But you don't need that 30-round magazine. You don't need that AR-15, that horrible weapon of war. You don't need any of those things, and so we want to take those away. This is a madness. It's almost as if these people they're just loons.
But Joel, where was the safe? I mean, Biden screams from the White House that you and I need to have our firearm, hopefully in a biometric safe, that we have to go and open up at 3 o'clock in the morning to defend ourselves. Where was his biometric safe for all those firearms, for all those aircraft? Oh, no, he just left it out in the front yard. Come and get it.
Well, here's the thing, too. If you got caught, okay, if you decided you wanted to buy a bunch of AR-15s, for example, and you got caught running those rifles and supplying the Taliban with even one of them, you would be prosecuted and put in prison they'd melt the key. You'd be sitting in federal prison, and that's it. And yet the president of the United States can provide the Taliban with I read the other day, $87 billion of high-tech weaponry, not just rifles, but fighter jets, military helicopters, explosive devices, rocket launchers, biometric devices. And you know what? Biden's not going to end up in jail. Well, General Milley, who ought to be run out of the military and imprisoned, isn't going to end up in jail. This is the joker the other day who said, well, we can work with the Taliban.
Yeah, my point is, and right along with you, Joel, is if you think about this for a moment, I don't care where you're at on the political spectrum. If any one of us did what you had said, and I'll just put, I hand over to anybody in that theater of conflict a firearm or any kind of munition, I will be tried for aiding and abetting the enemy of the United States of America and her allies. It is a felony. I am going to be locked up for a long time and will probably never see the light of day.
You'll be lucky if you're not tried for treason as well.
Right.
I mean, I don't know the law structure and how that works, but this is, and what Biden did, and I'm going to call it what it is, and I don't know, YouTube may ban me or something, but so be it. What Biden has done is an act of treason. He has aided and abetted our enemies. He has armed them, and he has left Americans behind enemy lines to suffer and die.
Exactly.
There's and I don't care whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. I'm neither. I vote what they call nonpartisan in California. I'm not a member of either party. I vote for the person I think has the best policies. So I don't align myself with either. And I don't care what you are. I don't care whether you're gay or straight. I don't care whether you're tall or short. I don't care what color your skin is. I don't care. You know what? We're all Americans. And as Americans, I am abhorred by what has been done right here. I find it incredible. In fact, I'm in my 60s, as you know, brother, and if anybody had ever asked me if a U.S. president would do such a thing, I would have said absolutely not, regardless of their political leanings one way or the other. Look, I didn't agree with Barack Obama on a lot of things, but I can't imagine him doing this. I didn't agree with Bill Clinton on a lot of things, but I can't imagine him doing this. I didn't agree with Jimmy Carter on most things, particularly when I was sitting in line in the 70s waiting for gas because I had an odd license plate and I could only buy gas on odd days. But I did not believe he would ever be capable of this. Right. This man is by far, without exception, without in any argument, the worst president in the history of this nation, and certainly in my 60 some odd years of life. And as you can tell, I'm ever so slightly upset about it. So forgive me for ranting, but this is insane what this guy has done. And I don't know what as a law-abiding citizen, I don't know what the answer is. But I do know one thing. I cannot trust my own government anymore. I can't.
Well, I think there's a couple of answers that I would push out to everybody. Answer number one is take this anger, take this righteous indignation that everybody has, and I'd start channeling in a positive way, called start firing anybody that supports these actions within Congress and even at your local government levels and state levels. Remove them from office and put people in there. I think what we're about to see is the largest group of veterans from this conflict that are ticked off, that are going to make a move to run for Congress, for the Senate, and for local government, because for the 20-year, or what he called the never-ending war, American men and women and their families, and I really want to highlight that for a moment, how it was absolutely reprehensible how the families of the 13 members were treated who lost their lives at Kabul. But I'm also going to say the message sent by this president to every person who passed away in this conflict. And on September 11th, when we're coming on the anniversary, I don't know how he goes out and talks to American people on the 20th anniversary when he was so reprehensible at Dover Air Force Base. But it's also all the men and women who have been injured, both internally with PTSD and other things that you can't always see with the eye, to the very real amputations and other scarring that has been done, but it's also to their families, to their friends, to their communities. This impacts every single American. And we can't trust the commander-in-chief when it's more important to look at his watch every time a coffin goes by than to show the same respect that every member of the military shows to those families. And, it's disgusting that when his go-to was, let me tell you about my relationship with my deceased son, Bo, instead of listening to the families. They're not there to hear about you and Bo. They're there to hear you be compassionate. And one of the things I'll give former President George W. Bush, on a couple occasions, I got to watch him literally get down on a knee in front of the family and thank them and apologize because it was his decision to put their child in harm's way, and was definitely empathetic with them. It wasn't a casual, like, well, that was their job, and let me see what time it is. I mean, that it's just disgusting. The other thing people can start doing is start remembering. It is so frustrating that people are all agitated right now, and my big fear is that they have the memory of a goldfish and 10 seconds later aren't going to remember. We need to pound this into our heads and remember that when these debates come up, that even if you've been on the fence on, should a person have an AR-15, common sense. If you have a pistol and the terrorist has, magazines that you're not supposed to have here in California, unless you got them during Freedom Week, which hopefully all of you did, you're not supposed to have the big scary sorry, why are you handicapping us to defend ourselves? Because you're certainly not seeing the military that you're downsizing into anybody's community. And we all got to see how crazy things got during the beginning of COVID with people darn near rioting over toilet paper. Can you imagine if we had a major disaster or something and then you had a terrorist act? They're not going to be there to help you. You have to be able to defend yourself. We have an argument. We have an ongoing debate with this president, this administration, with the current vice president, because as you know, Joel, we dealt with Kamala when she was our attorney general here. And senator. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Who were you? My apologies.
And it might be the example of we could go from bad to worse, depending on what happens. But we need to remember these events of like, hey, you gave away this many of the firearms that you told the American people they can't have. So I want people to think about this. Take you, any member of your family, and put them in this category. American citizen. The evil enemy that we have fought for 20 years. These people get free firearms to create more havoc and more death around the world with those symbols. Because just like when you see an AK-47, whether it's fair or not, you assume that comes from Russia. or China. When you see an M4, that comes from us, the United States. It's a symbol. It's an optics game. And what you have to realize is the optics right now to the entire world is, hello, it's okay for, anybody to have an American firearm except Americans. And we cannot forget that this president put that on the global stage. And so from the United Nations down to your local city council, this has to be hammered home. This has to be confronted. And people that don't understand that, they work for us, fire them. Get rid of them. Because this is a defense issue of this country. Because what Biden did was told all of our enemies, it's a free-for-all against the United States. And we have to realize our government largely is out of control and not responsive to the needs of the safety and security of the American people. And this president has lost all legitimacy in staying up and saying anything. I would think that at this point, ironically, this should be the one time that people like the Brady Group join us and say, what the heck are you doing giving away guns? But you know what's remarkable to me? I haven't seen one thing from the Brady people, the Giffords people. I haven't seen one thing from Bloomberg or Soros going, what the heck were you doing, Mr. President? I thought you were working with us not to put guns in the hands of bad people. They've been absolutely silent. And I want people to remember this, because that silence proves my point that I've been saying for years. They don't care about your safety. You're sitting in the middle thinking, well, they're trying to protect me and my family, and I'm not a big person or advocate for gun ownership. Stop for a second. If that was true, if that was really true, they would have been among the first voices to criticize this act. But they have been silent. And as an old debate person and a debate coach, silence is admission. They are supporting the president in their silence. And you need to wake up and realize that what is at stake right now is your ability to defend your family. And there is no legitimacy for any of those groups anymore in the gun control debate. And that's why the CRPA is not going to listen to those groups. We're not going to meet them at the table, because they should have met us at the table and called the president out. And they failed to do so. So now we know they're just puffed up, and what they're about is disarming law-abiding citizens and supporting criminal activity both here and abroad, and bringing that abroad here to do harm to us.
One of those people who needs to be fired that supports the president's name is Gavin Newsom.
Yep.
Because he's been very clear on the fact that he supports the way Biden did this. And at least that's what I've read. I mean, I haven't heard it out of his mouth, but I've read articles about it. Gavin Newsom needs to be fired. We have an opportunity to do that. If you have not voted, vote yes on question 1 and get your vote in. If you think it means nothing, well, if you don't put it in there, you're right.
No, I would
argue that if you don't put it in there, you're doing more harm than good, because you now have taken a vote away and given it to the other guy. So make sure that you vote and get your vote. If you don't want to put it in the mail, I get it, because we're all concerned that the mail is probably a little hinky as well. Then take it down to the polling place. Whatever you want to do, make sure that that vote gets in. Make sure that it gets in on time. Let your voice be heard, and let's fire that guy. That'll cause some ripples through the politics of California like you have no idea. And then we can start working on some of these crumb bums in the California legislature at the same time we're working on the crumb bums in the United States Congress. Look at the incredible disasters that this man has brought about in an amazingly short period of time. I mean, from day one, he was like a Tasmanian devil. He ripped through this country and started destroying it day one. We're 8 months in. We have no southern border. We have people coming over by the tens of thousands. We don't even know who they are. Occasionally they catch some, and when they do, they've found actual people on the terrorist watch list coming into our country. He's gone to the Middle East and provided 86 or $87 billion of high-tech weaponry to a terrorist organization that we've been fighting for 20 years. That much of that weaponry will end up, especially the high-tech stuff, is going to end up in the hands of China and be reverse engineered so China knows what we do. He's abandoned American citizens in that country. He's abandoned people who have helped us in that country to be tortured and killed. our economy is starting to go down the tubes. Inflation is going up. Our gas prices are almost $5 a gallon. Is there one thing that this guy has gotten right? And in the process of making it harder to live, more expensive to live, and more dangerous on our streets, he wants to disarm us.
Right. And which
that should rattle the tar out of anybody. I don't care what their political leaning is.
No, and I think that's where we've got to be. We've got to start looking at this and reminding everybody, like I said earlier, don't let this be a soundbite. This has got to be a rallying cry. We have got to take this to the streets and say enough's enough. Because, like you said, 8 months. He has still got another, almost 40 months? If he's done this to us in 8, what's he going to do in 40?
Yeah, I mean, we've got to take the Senate and the House back for America first people. Not rhinos, please, but actual America first, American people first people. We got to get rid of the rhinos. There's no light between the Mitch McConnells and the Chuck Schumers. There's just no light between them. They're there for themselves. They're there for their own power and their own authority, and they go whichever way the political wind blows is going to allow them to stay in power. There's no light between them. I don't care if one has an R or one has a D. We have to look at people based upon, are they out for the American people? Are they America first and Americans first? Are they defenders of freedom? Are they defenders and respecters of the United States Constitution, God, family, country? And if that's who they are, then we vote for them. And if it isn't, then we fire them. That's where. Go ahead.
I agree with you completely, Joel. I mean, at CRPA, one of the things that we constantly tell people is Second Amendment's not a Republican issue. It's an American issue. And that is why we have, state senators and assemblymen that are Democrats who own firearms, and they go target shoot, they hunt, and they vote with us. We have Republicans that do that. And guess what? We have Republicans that will never stand up for the Second Amendment inside the Assembly and Senate, just as we have Democrats that attack us all the time. And so we have to realize that, a lot of our membership and membership in the E2A group, it's across the political spectrum. We have lots of people that bought their first firearm in the last year and a half during COVID, who aren't what people would stereotypically think of. I mean, we've got women are the predominant buyers of those firearms, people of color, various ethnic backgrounds who are scared to death of what they're seeing going on. And that was before the last couple of weeks happened. And so I think we're going to see a rise on more firearms being purchased as we move forward, because Americans are waking up. But now what we got to do is, now that you're awake, we need you to come and work with us and join us and start learning and being encouraged, because we have not lost this country, nor will we. We will all stand together and work according to the Constitution to preserve this union. But we need to realize the arguments that you're making, Joel, all the time, that I'm making, and others that we both interact with, we've got to make sure that people are hearing those arguments over and over, and not just the propaganda on that Biden and others like him use.
Well, I think the other thing I'd like to point out too, if you don't mind, and it's not, it sounds like it's off topic, but it's not. The Democrats as a group claim that they are very progressive. They are for women's rights. They are for trans rights. They're for gay and lesbian rights. They support all these things. What do you suppose is going to happen to women, and is happening to women in Afghanistan right now? What do you suppose is going to happen, and is happening to young girls right now? What is going to happen to people who are gay or lesbian or trans? There are some, from what I understand, in Afghanistan, and their life is going to be a living hell for the short time that it continues to exist. And yet, this has been done by the bumbling president of the United States, who claims to support these people. Look, the Second Amendment doesn't care. The United States Constitution doesn't care if you're gay or straight, or black or brown or white. It doesn't care whether you're trans. It doesn't care. You're an American. You bleed red just like the rest of us. At the end of the day, we all bleed red. And I think it's important for us to remember that these rights are ours to defend and to keep. And so I urge you, whatever your political leaning is, whatever your religious beliefs are, if you have them, whatever your social beliefs are, societal beliefs are, you're an American. And if you'd like to have the freedom to continue to have those things, I urge you to support the Constitution, and most effectively and most importantly, the Second Amendment, because we say it over and over again, and it is so true. If we lose the Second Amendment, we lose all the other ones too, because we don't have the ability to defend them anymore. That's why there are groups like the Pink Pistols, for example. I suspect a lot of them are probably Democrat. Okay, who cares? This is an American issue, not a Democrat, not a Republican one, not an independent one, not a Green Party one, not a whatever. It's an American issue. And I think that's come home very, very clearly in what's happened in this last few weeks.
Well, I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to go and talk to all of your fan base and the people that listen to this show, because it's invaluable. But I want to encourage anybody that's listening to the show, feel free to reach out to me personally if you have something you want to say or get involved. You can do so at contact@crpa.org. And any support you want to throw to us, you can also at crpa.org. But Joel, I cannot thank you enough for the service that you provide to Sam and Gun Owners of California, myself, and other groups, because you are making a difference, and we're very appreciative.
It's absolutely my pleasure. Thanks for coming on the show, Rick. We'll do it again. Have a wonderful week and stay in the fight.
You too.
Thank you very much for watching all the way through. I'm very grateful that you did that. Thank you very much for your support of our military members, wherever they may be. Thank you very much for your love of this country. I'm grateful for you, and I hope that wherever you go, whatever you do this week, you'll stay safe.